Michael Chiklis, Emmy legend. Before we talk about the race that you're in this year for Best Supporting Actor in a Movie Mini for American Horror Story Freak Show, let's go back to 2002 when you led the charge of cable television's breakthrough against broadcast TV at the Emmys. You hold the distinction of being the first major victory by a cable show, free cable channel, when you won Best Actor for The Shield. Take us back there. That had to be a heady moment for you.
Insane. You know, I was actually called the night before by Peter Lagori, who was then the president of FX, and he congratulated me, and we were friends. And he said, "Michael, listen, we're thrilled. You know, you got invited to the dance, but you can't win."
Well, you know who you were up against. Look at who you were up against that year. I wrote it down. Kiefer Sutherland, James Gandolfini, Martin Sheen, and Michael C. Hall.
I know. I'm was painfully aware. And what's worse, I walked onto the red carpet, and the first people I saw Sheen talking to Sorkin and Spielberg. And my wife turned to me, and Hanks too. And my wife turned to me sort of stricken and went like, "Are you going to be all right?" Like, you know, when you lose. And I was like, yeah, I'm invited. But anyway, Peter had called me the night before, and he said, "You can't win." And it's funny because I swear, I didn't think there was a chance I could win anyway coming off of an FX show. But interestingly, when he said that, I bristled. It wasn't until someone said to me, "You can't win," that I went like, "Hey, you know, like, why not?" And he goes, "Here's why. There's 480 voting members of the Academy at NBC. There's like 390 at CBS. We have 7. I was like, "Oh, okay." You know, and I thought, all right, well, then, you know, it's just not meant. And he said, like, it would just have to be so pure. People would have to just vote strictly on the work, not for their shows, not for their network, nothing like that. So when they called my name, I was truly not prepared, completely stunned. And she said it too, "Michael," and she paused and then said Chiklis, and I thought, oh wow, Michael C. Hall's got it. In my head. Because, you know, I was thinking, honestly, I was thinking Kiefer at the time because he had just broken through with, you know, I think it was 24, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. Crazy. And I knew immediately at that moment, it's amazing how fast the synapses in your mind fire. Because I've looked at that tape and I think, wow, that's all the whole time it was? It was all of, you know, from when I heard the word, when I heard my name to going up there, doing the speech and walking off, that was all of maybe 2 minutes. And I think of the flood, the deluge of thoughts that went through my mind through that period. It is true that everything slows down to a standstill, and you can't really feel your extremities, and it's no wonder that people don't make mistakes on that stage and say the damnedest things, because it's really an out-of-body experience, particularly if you're not ready for it, if you really aren't prepared, and I was not. It's an overwhelming experience. It's amazing, actually.
Now, that was the first season of The Shield, was it?
That was, yes.
Right, so, and then I'm trying to remember now, because I watch all the episodes every year that were submitted to the Emmy judging period. I think you submitted the pilot. I'd have to go back and look. But I remember about your submission. I was surprised because I know that if you get nominated, you really have a fair shot, because the pool is only 70 to 100 fellow actors. They're looking at one sample episode submitted by the others, and your episode was very powerful and flashy and theatrical, and bombastic, just all that big acting that they love. But as I recall, and I should have looked this up before we started this, but as I recall, it wasn't very sympathetic. You were a bastard in that episode, right?
Yes, I was a bastard. I killed a fellow cop. I shot him in the face.
Yeah.
At the end of the episode.
And so normally you don't, unless you're a sympathetic character, you don't normally win for those episodes. Yeah.
Right. It was either the first episode of season 1 or the last episode of season 1. It was either of those. I believe it was episode 1. I believe it was the pilot. and that's the one that ends with me shooting Terry in the face. So yeah, you're right. Again, there were so many firsts and so many outrageous things about that win, and I knew, like I said, my synapses were firing. I knew the moment that I stood up, I thought, oh my God, this is basic cables on the map suddenly. This is going to change everything.
And it did, because we'd
well,
had
the next year scripted series on most of those netlets, right? And now it's spawned the likes of Mad Men and Breaking Bad and all of these shows that came out subsequently. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great thing.
And then you went on to win the Golden Globe, so you were a little more prepared. That was right after the Emmy, right? I think.
Yes, but I was completely convinced that we couldn't possibly win it because we had won the Emmy.
Right.
It would be backlash. But I have to say, what was even much more powerful about winning the Golden Globe that night, personally, was that we won Best Show.
Yeah.
And I remember we were in the top corner there in that square, floor there by the stage. So we were in the back corner, and when they said the Shield, I'll never forget it in my life, the collective sound of, I don't know, what are there, 1,300 people there?
Yes, exactly.
Of 1,200 people taking in air simultaneously. 1,200 people going, because no one expected it. It just gave me goosebumps again. And the late, great Scott Brazil, I think he punched me in the arm really hard. Another incredible experience. Just crazy.
Wow. Okay, so all you have to do is do it again, Michael. Now you're up this year, and what's interesting about this year is you're up against your co-stars now, because Ryan Murphy has promoted your son in this episode, Evan Peters, to lead. The rest of you stay in supporting. So you're nominated against Finn Wittrick. You're nominated against Dennis O'Hare. And actually, you're number 2 to win in the current odds at Gold Derby. Now, these changed. Don't get your hopes up, but because you got to get by Bill Murray. He's tough because he's in that Ollage Kitteridge. But you're number 2 currently, and
really?
Yeah. At least according to the users, the experts haven't piped in yet. So the heat's on, kiddo.
Okay. My heart's racing.
You're the strong man in this show. Let's talk about your character, because it really can win, because it's got the emotional complexity that the Emmy voters look for when they look at these individual performances. Your character, Dell, that's his name, right? He gets drunk. He cries. He has a character transformation. He goes from evil to good and back again and back again. Constantly. There's a lot of emotional shading to this guy. He's a very interesting character, isn't he?
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, 1950s, closeted homosexual, tortured, self-hating, suicidal, alcoholic. Just, it was lots of fun to shoot. No, I was in hell every single day shooting that show.
Why? Just because it was. Your character just the murder. Without spoiling if somebody hasn't seen it. The murder that you commit of someone else, and it's just heartbreak. And the great scene you have there is when you fall to your knees and just say, "Kill me, I deserve it." Yeah.
Well, because he does, and he knows it, and it's horrible. And yeah, you're right. It's the kind of stuff that that actors dream about to get a chance to sink their teeth into. And I thank Ryan up and down for giving me the opportunity to play someone like that. When he brought me in, all he said to me was, "Here, you're going to play a strong man who has tremendous weaknesses in his character." And that's the irony of this character, is that for someone with this incredibly powerful outward facade, he is just absolutely collapsing from within. And I went, "Oh, okay. And you're going to write that? All right, I'll do that." And that basically is where I had no idea he was going to take it to the places. I don't think he did either, really, at the time. I think that, he has this broad strokes sort of conception of what he wants to do. And then he gets into the brass tacks of it day by day, and I think that he has these epiphanies, and as he texted me every so often, he's like, "Oh, I have it. I know what you're going to do." I was like, "Oh, great." And the whole mon petit of it all my daughters still don't speak to me. So I mean,
Well,
are they?
I almost was going to just crucify you right here. I mean, it is unforgivable. Poor Ma Petite, the most precious little thing.
Well, when I read it, I lost my mind. I was like, really? Of all? Oh my God! It's so. I, actually, I have to say, in all honesty, I'm not being an actor about this. It's just true. The scene, and I don't want to spoiler alert.
Yeah, we've already spoiled it, so we're out of this. Just keep going.
Yeah, well, but I mean, I'm just going to say something. If people haven't seen it, turn away, whatever, shut it off. When the scene where I attempt to commit suicide was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I think if you're an actor worth your salt, you go to the places you're asked to go to in the script. And the week leading up to that scene and the week after it, I was really in a very bad place. It was a horrible thing to walk around and contemplate. It's just something that I really hope to God I never get in a place that bleak and dark in my life, in my real life, that would ever, push me to those lengths. I mean, but it made me really think and empathize with anyone who is not accepted to the point where they hate themselves, to the point where they feel such shame and such personal hate toward themselves that they would want to take their own lives. It was just brutal to just walk around in that, and then to perform that, and then to walk away from that. It stayed with me for longer than any other scene I've ever done, and I've done some pretty disturbing scenes in my career, but that, maybe it's because I've lost a few people in my life that way, that I've had people take their own lives that I knew well personally, and I just, I just hope that anyone even contemplating that will seek help, find a way to love themselves, to go and talk to somebody, do anything, but don't do that, because it's like, if you just wait 5 minutes, something great will happen. Something will happen, Anyway.
And in your character's case, although we're jumping the timeline here, in your character's case, despite all these horrible things that kept happening to this man, he discovers his son in this storyline. And that was another great journey here, because at one point, a couple points, you try to kill him. But yet there is these guys who are both freaks and find each other. When the bonding happens and father-son connection occurs, it's very powerful stuff.
Well, he's trying, I just think that anybody who really does wrong and then really suffers and then tries to redeem themselves, that's a very relatable thing. I think that he did things that just you can't come back from, and I think that's why it's called American Horror Story and not something else, because it truly is a horror story, and it isn't telling the story of people who can seek and find redemption. These are people who really can't, and you're watching a tragedy unfold, basically. It's just a really entertaining ride. But I think that, if you just watch someone who's, although I will say the character of Dandy was interesting in spite of the fact that he's completely psychopathic and sociopathic. And, just it's not that he was devoid of emotion. He had plenty of emotion, but he was insane. And that was interesting. But I just find it particularly interesting when someone, I suppose if it was flat, if someone is devoid of conscience and just does things and doesn't care, well, that's not very interesting to watch, and you just hate that person and want them to be dead. It's just very interesting to watch someone who's done something horribly wrong, who knows it, who suffers for it, and then wants to do better and redeem themselves in some way, and in this case, not able to, and, meets the fate that he probably deserves.
Do you have any fun stories about life on the sets? I mean, things always go wrong. Nothing goes according to script when you shoot anything, right? Was there a tent fall down on anybody, or?
There are lots of little things, and just the weather is. It's actually a character in the show. because, New Orleans is a great city, but it is not a great city in the summer. It just isn't. It's horrible. If you're going to be outside, people shouldn't live there. It's in that time period. It's horrible. We're online, so I can swear, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute shit. I mean, it's just 95 degrees in the shade and 75% humidity, and you're wearing the air, and it's brutal. And so you take into every scene, because we were out in a swamp in the middle of nowhere, and I'm wearing you'll notice all those pants I'm wearing with the suspenders, they're all wool period pants. I'm dying. So there was lots of that. There was lots of alligators and snakes. It really kind of made the whole thing interesting, and the period come to life too, because remember, we're way out in a remote swamp. There's no one around. It's that whole tent city there. It's 1,000,000 degrees outside. We're all in period garb, and really, unless you went around the corner and looked at the circus, meaning the base camp, there was no other. You really felt like you were transported into the early 1950s. There was nothing that indicated anything else. So I found that really fascinating and interesting and fun to watch. There were a lot of technical glitches. I was lucky because I didn't have to do a lot with Sarah, and Sarah really had the big technical issues because she had 2 heads, and I felt bad for anyone who even had to do the scene work with her, because they had to do this whole thing between the 2 heads, and she would be on one side and then she'd be on the other. So, yeah, it was like a technical nightmare, and the fact that those scenes cut so well and is a real testament to her talent and how amazingly talented she is. I was bummed that I didn't get to work with her more. But at the same time, once I saw how terribly technical it was, I was actually really glad that I didn't.
Well, my favorite thing of the whole show was Twisty the Clown, and my complaint about this freak show is we didn't get enough of Twisty. I mean, he should have kept going throughout the whole year. Don't you agree?
John Carroll Lynch, let me tell you, I met him on the set. I've been a fan of his for years, right? And I met him on the set of American Horror Story. And a couple of fantastic one-liners he had. I walk out of the trailer, and there he is, coming out of doing the scene where he's just covered in blood. He's soaking wet with sweat because it's 1,000,000 and he's in the degrees and he's in all that, clown garb. And he takes one look at me, and I go, "Oh man, how you doing?" He goes, he looks at me with this face, with the twisty thing. Oh my God! And he goes, "What? And quit show business?" And he walks by me, and I just cracked up. So then I had to go out to dinner with him because I was like, I got to pick this guy's brain. And I said to him at one point, "Man, how come, we have so many people in common? How did we not work together?" And he goes,
Oh, because there's this visual
"How are we going to get cast in the same show?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." He goes, "Unless they cast us as twin brothers or something,
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah, he was a funny guy, but what a compelling, amazing performance. But like you said, I think it was cut short.
Yeah, they should have kept Twisty around.
Yeah, Twisty was terrifying. Right?
But they gave him humanity. That's what was so cool. By the end, you actually empathized with this character. You never thought.
Right, but that's a testament also to John, because to do the things that he did in that role and to still be able to garner empathy from an audience is masterwork. Because he was just horrible. Just horrifying and horrible. And then you find yourself, my 16-year-old was literally crying, going, "Twisty!" And I'm like, "What? Twisty?" And she's just crying over Twisty.
I was crying too. Don't. There were a lot of us out there, Michael.
Oh,
anyway,
you shed tears. You shed tears for Twisty.
Yeah, near the end, I probably did.
Wow, dude. Well, I felt bad. I did. I felt bad, but I didn't feel that bad. Maybe I'm awful. I don't know. He just.
I just remember being devastated. I don't know.
That's funny.
Okay. All right, our connection's goofing up here. Thank you, Michael. This is great. So cool to catch up with you here on video. Good luck at the Emmys. You're a legend coming back for more. You had one of the great roles on television this year. You played the hell out of it. So you really, really deserve to be in this running, and you deserve to win too. So, but it's a crapshoot. You've been there before. You know how this goes.
Knock wood. I'm superstitious. Thank you very much.
Okay. See you. Thanks.
See ya.